we'll call the meeting to order at 6:03 and going on administrative items. Call for any additions or changes to the agenda for this evening. Does anybody have any of those? No? All right. And then we'll move on to the approval of the January 13th Select Board meeting minutes. Those were posted. Does anybody have any questions about those or adjustments specifically? I didn't see any.
I'll move adoption.
Thank you. Anne?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, any opposed? No, we're all here anyway. Great. Vote to approve board orders that were posted to the share drive. Hopefully everybody had opportunity to review those. Does anybody have any specific questions about the board orders? I don't think that there were any changes, right? I didn't see any others. Great. Can I get a motion to approve and sign the board orders as posted?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you. And the adoption of a resolution in the new health reimbursement arrangements with MVP Healthcare. So those were in Kari's memo, and there's a resolution in there as well. Kari, do you want to? Is there anything really to discuss?
Just a formality.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
It's considered a separate plan from the medical insurance. It's administered by a separate company, actually. And you would just be adopting these resolutions is authorizing me as the administrator to carry out the health reimbursement arrangement.
Is it any more than you were doing, or you, the staff, was doing under the old plan? Because seemed like there was a lot you had to do, and since the old plan was adopted before I was on the board, I don't actually know. So it's the same?
It's the same.
Okay.
So far.
It just looked like a lot that we had to do, and I was surprised. Okay.
It's not that much.
Okay.
And the company does a lot of it, right? I mean, it's administered by...
Yeah, so everybody who's part of the HRA gets a debit card. They pay for prescriptions or medical visits using this, co-pays and such. And then the administrator sends us a weekly report, and then I have to do the accounting.
Okay.
And it just looks like it has, I guess we would authorize Kari to sign the resolution, right? It just has.
That's fine,
yeah.
either Tegan or I, but basically stating that you adopted this resolution. So that's fine.
And do we have to state that we're appointing Kari to be administrator?
I think it says...
It
that?
does. It says that, it says the town administrator resolved that the administrator shall be instructed to take such actions, et cetera. So I think it's just a matter of also authorizing Kari to sign it, to adopt the resolution and authorize Kari to sign. So if that sounds about right, can I get a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you, Kari. That wraps up the administrative work. So we've got a period of 15 minutes for public comment on anything that's not on the agenda. And I don't see that we have any members of the public, but always, Barbara, welcome to take the full 15 minutes if you need it.
Yes, I will just let you know that the town office was open until 5 o'clock to accept any candidate paperwork to run for office on Australian ballot. So thank you, Christy, got her paperwork in, so she'll be running for re-election to her select board seat. John McCullough is running for re-election as lister, and Ann Winchester's seat is open. We got no candidates there. So we'll need, I suspect the select board will be wanting to appoint someone in the next meeting or two. And so we can discuss either now or offline, whatever you do, about how you would like for us to recruit candidates for appointment.
That's a great question. I wonder if we can have a little bit more conversation about that in the town meeting, or the town meeting portion of the evening. It's not exactly on there, but I kind of wonder whether or not.
Related.
Yeah, it's kind of somewhat related, I guess. And I've got a question to levy there, so thanks, Barbara, for that update. 2025 appointments. So we have a list compiled by Barbara. We just wanted to take the opportunity to review that and get an update on whether there had been any new hands raised in the time since our last meeting and review. Barbara, would you like to give an update on that?
So I sent you guys, I was in communication with people over the weekend, which is why I didn't send the spreadsheet update until this morning. So if you've had a chance to see that, that's great. If not, it's in your folder. So we can talk about the annual appointments first, if you like.
I think that would be.
I'm back alive over here.
You're up? Thank you, Rose.
That's great.
So under the annual appointments, we've had one candidate or one nominee step up. David Healy is offering to come back as a representative with Northeast Kingdom CV Fiber as the alternate. And in fact, he's a little bit concerned about how CV Fiber is progressing in Calais. And so he would actually like to be appointed at the next select board meeting and then reappointed again in April. So you'll see that on your agenda when we, or at least the draft agenda, and we'll talk about that
Okay.
appointment possibly in early February.
Okay.
I cannot remember why we opted to not be recruiting for constable, but I just want to make sure I'm correct, that I was instructed to not include constable in the recruitment effort, correct? I can't remember why.
That is correct.
Okay.
And the rationale there, as best I can characterize it, is that it's among the list of items that we wanted some feedback from the town attorney on keeping open as a spot, or how we would go about considering rolling it back, considering the nature of the work and the contracts that we have and needs that we have for law enforcement activities, et cetera. And before we made any decision one way or the other to either bring somebody on board and try to get them trained, et cetera, to get some feedback from our attorney, which I'm not sure we've received quite yet. Either Kari or I will work on the rest of
I just wanted to make sure I
it.
hadn't overlooked that, done it.
The other complication there, kind of in that context, we, in the currently adopted budget, chose not to appropriate a stipend for that position, knowing that it's kind of challenging to keep individuals in that position.
So the Northeast Kingdom CV Fiber is the only update I have for annual appointments. So for board, committee, and commissions, you can see we've had 3 people step up for 3 different committees, which is really great. We have now a new opening that we didn't know about the last time we talked about that, because someone over the weekend or at the end of last week has resigned from the Development Review Board. So now we have not only a DRB alternate seat open, but a full seat open.
So question there, Barbara?
Yeah.
Paul Olander has said he would step up to be alternate. Would he be open to the?
So I only learned about the DRB opening over the weekend, and so I had already connected Paul with Willa and Candy last week, and I emailed the 2 of them this morning and said, when you meet, because they're scheduled to get together this week, probably by phone. I've asked Willa to discuss with Paul, might he be interested in a full seat as opposed to an alternate seat, and to please let me know how that conversation goes.
Thanks.
So the question's out there.
Okay, thanks.
And so that is my report. Do you have any questions before I ask my burning question?
I don't have any questions. That all seems pretty straightforward. Thanks,
Okay.
Barbara. What is your question?
Okay, so when we talked about the recruitment, we agreed that I would promote it, with people, asking people to submit their statements of interest by Friday, January 24th, which was 3 days ago. So now I'm just looking for approval to go through another 2-week cycle and ask people to please submit their interest by February 7th, which is the Friday before your next select board meeting.
Yes, because we still have some vacancies, right? The emergency management one bothers me.
Well, we have made progress there in the last month or so, and the the potential candidate wants to attend an emergency management meeting, and emergency management hasn't met since the last time we discussed this 2 weeks ago, but they're scheduled to meet soon.
Okay.
So hopefully that will wrap up. But do you guys have any other recommendations or suggestions in additional efforts? We discussed my proposed recruitment rollout at the last meeting, which I did all of that. And if you get those electronic newsletters either from Maple Corner Community Store or the Adamak Co-op or Calais Elementary School or Friends of Calais, it's been posted at all those places as well as around town and everything I can think of. So if you have any other suggestions, let me know.
No, I think I'm just trying to be kind of like mindful of the timeline for making appointments and having discussions with anybody. But I think I don't feel strongly, I guess, about having the deadline perpetually be the next meeting. Just because as we get closer to town meeting, I guess I don't want it to. I'd give the perception of folks that will be considering appointments or making appointments before town meeting, unless there's like a special request to do so, put it on the agenda. So I don't know. Does anybody have any strong feelings about deadlines or other ways that we can motivate people to raise their hands? We could go around poking people with sticks. I guess that's about all I can do. But at this point, I'm open to any continued effort to let people know what the openings are.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you want the discussion about select board member later? I mean, that could be added to the list.
I think it should stay, at the top of the list.
Well, no.
In the context of kind of what's been unfolding with the Australian ballot and floor votes and that sort of thing, and given the kind of history that we went through with our previous round of appointed positions, if we had an Australian ballot, or if we had a process for having folks put in their petitions to be on the Australian ballot, but we haven't received any, my interpretation, could we then entertain floor votes, or would we have to provide the opportunity for a
No.
That I don't know, but
No.
what we can do, if
Okay.
anybody has any interest, they can launch their own write-in campaign.
I see.
And that way, somebody could be elected by the public at town meeting on the Australian ballot through
By
the
way
write-in
of write-in,
campaign.
yeah.
That's a good point, so we should let that process play out.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that's all I really
And
wanted
so
to
if
kind of be.
so
I didn't want to
Do a
Yeah.
separate email to the front porch forum and so forth about if anybody's interested in running for select board to launch their own write-in campaign. Yeah.
to launch their own write-in campaign, or at which point I guess the select board would be entertaining the likelihood of making an appointment for the open position, because that would be the next course of action.
Ann's term goes till town meeting,
Correct.
which is the day that the election would be.
Correct.
So the appointment wouldn't be till after town meeting.
Correct.
Right, okay. So we're not appointing until after town meeting.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So the communication would need to be then there's still a seat for which no one is running on the select board. So any interested citizen, you've missed your deadline for the ballot, but if you wanted to
What's the
start
threshold? Yeah.
a write-in campaign, talk to the clerk.
What's the threshold for?
I think as long as somebody gets 30 votes on a write-in campaign, but there's Tegan, I bet she can confirm for us.
I think you just need 15. I think you just need the number of signatures you need for the petition. I will double check that before we post anything, but I think it's just 15.
So would you like for a front porch forum post to come out from the town office or from the select board chair? I think it should come from the town office.
I'm happy to
I think it's more
I think it should come
appropriate
from
from the town office or Tegan. I don't know that we need to be explicit about the number of votes needed. I mean, I want this to be a fairly controlled process.
Yeah, well, Tegan will get all the specifics from the Secretary of State's office as to what exactly is entailed in running a write-in campaign.
Yep.
And we'll get it out on Front Porch Forum.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tegan. Thank you, Barbara. Do you feel like you have the information you need for the appointment communication room? Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. So, town meeting. Yeah, you want to talk about the updates to the town budget that we're
Yeah, so we're coming to you with an 11th hour recommended update to the budget. Didn't expect to be here, but so last time you saw the budget, it was assuming that Barbara's position, which is 3 different roles, assistant town clerk, select board administrator, assistant treasurer, was going to be covered by 2 part-time positions. But since the last time we met, Tegan, Barbara, and I were able to sort of dig into what is this actually going to look like. And essentially, when we looked at what Tegan is willing to take on, what it makes sense for me to take on is mainly in the treasurer role, and what Barbara is willing to maintain, it didn't make a lot of sense to create that second part-time position because it would essentially be, I think, receptionist duties, and there's just not enough there. So then as we talked about that further, then we said, well, really it makes sense, and it just assuming that next year is going to be a transition, that we don't know exactly how it's going to play out, it does make sense to maintain this as a full-time position so that if and when Barbara does leave us, then we have something of real value to offer to someone who can come in, and hopefully we can sort of groom for the future.
But you're saying 30 hours.
At 30 hours. But that would be a
But that's
full-time position.
full-time, it's
benefits
more than
eligible.
half-time, so there's benefits.
Yeah, that's benefits eligible. So that's the key there. So in making the adjustments to the budget, if you were to approve this, it's a little bit less in terms of labor, payroll costs and payroll taxes, more obviously on the budget, on the benefit side. And then it netted out to an increase of $6,600. And so if we did this, that would bump up the increase on the general government highway combined proposed budget to 5.3. So go over the 4.9 or go over the 5% threshold. But all in with the warrant special articles, it'd still be 4.7%. Not ideal. However, I do think there is real value in maintaining a full-time position. Yeah.
So if I could jump in and just add, so what we would do is, the big difference for me is that I'll just be in the town office 2 days a week and working remotely the rest of the day. So it will feel very different to me and probably to Tegan and Kari, but I will be maintaining basically everything most of everything I've already been doing. It's just doing more work remotely instead of in the office 4 days a week.
But you won't be able to answer the phones if you're at home, so who
I
will
know,
take
poor
that?
Tegan.
Well, part of that arrangement, just to respond to your question, was that Barbara would be in the office Monday and Tuesday, and there's a dramatic difference most weeks between Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, Thursday.
Yeah, Monday, Tuesdays, Monday's the busiest, Tuesday's the next, and by Wednesday, Thursday, it starts to get quiet.
Oh, so
Thursdays are kind of dead.
Wow. We're early week people in Calais.
Yes.
Well, I understand it's a kind of a last minute adjustment, but I do appreciate the time that Teagan, Barbara, and Kari have put into this. I know that it's been a series of mindful conversations about the office workload, and I agree with Kari that this is likely the way to go that puts us in the position of greatest flexibility should we decide to change course somewhere partially through next year and the next fiscal year, and it kind of gives everybody an opportunity to kind of feel out the transition as best we can. So thank you.
Thanks.
Does anybody have any other questions about that modification to the budget or opinions? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion to re-adopt the budget as outlined with this adjustment.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you.
Barbara.
Thank you, everybody. And we'll have to change the report where it refers to those
Yes,
numbers.
we'll do that tomorrow morning. We've already put the design person on notice. So I can make the change to you, just copy you in.
That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's in the text and the graphic.
Yep.
So the discussion of the draft warning then, does that need further discussion other than making that particular adjustment?
So that was the only change since the last time you saw it. Of course, all that business about the election of town officials, we're setting aside based on everybody's recommendation at this point. And just to confirm that the cemetery commission did get to meet. I think they had like a 3-minute meeting, and they're in support of the way that the article reads, that the select board would control their reserve fund.
That's great.
So.
So we have to approve it. We have to sign the town meeting warning.
You do? Okay. Fresh copy.
Does anybody else have any other questions about the warning
So
as it currently
the
appears?
budget number needs to be changed in the warning too?
It has been. The version that's in this week's folder.
Yep.
Town attorney said this was good.
Yep, they did.
All right.
All right. Well, with that, can I get a motion to approve and authorize the signing of the town meeting warning?
Move to approve and authorize the signing of the town meeting warning.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye. Woo!
Woohoo! All right.
Wow.
Thank you. So we've got discussion of the plans for the town meeting presentations and pre-meeting communications that'll be rolling out. Karen, you want to take?
Yeah, so there's a couple things to discuss tonight. One is that there is a draft of a article presentation plan. It's basically just each of the articles with somebody's name by it. And it doesn't have any specific logic really. When we did have some articles in there about the election of officials, I was giving that to Christy, but then those went away. So.
Luckily,
So
that's
it's
gone.
it's a little bit random, but does anybody have any changes that they want to make, anything that they don't want to do or really want to do? Or?
Just a question. Are you saying we should just be prepared to
Be
talk
prepared.
about those as opposed to actually expecting to
I
talk
think in
about it?
most cases it would be reactive.
Okay.
We can.
That's how we did it last
We can be
year.
flexible about that. I think with the budget, if it's Jordan and I, we'll have a few things to say before we vote. And we can talk about this with Gus at the next meeting in terms of how he'll moderate. But for most of these things, I think it will be reactive, and in some cases, it may be redundant. You know, so if you're in charge of the fire department ones, the ambulance, there may well be someone from the fire department there that's got more specific knowledge of what's there, but
Will we know ahead of time if the Woodbury or East Montpelier?
we can find that out.
Yeah, let's,
They usually come.
They usually,
It's
yeah.
in their interest to be there,
Well, you would think.
but we'll check and confirm.
Okay.
Do they split that? Somebody must attend the
Each one.
East Montpelier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they have their informational thing the Saturday before.
Hmm.
plus they're more nervous about ours because we pull it out as
Pull
a
it out
separate
separately.
item, so
Oh.
Albert always comes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He'll be there.
Yep. I mean, I think that's pretty straightforward. Does anybody feel particularly passionate about an area that they're not listed for, or impassionate about something that they are listed for? I don't suspect that we're going to have a ton of questions this year relative to the articles that we have. I mean, the last couple of years, we've had bond votes and other things. This year, it's, I think, largely the budget and.
I don't know, the cemetery fence might be a long discussion.
It could, but there's, I would think that the cemetery commission should be prepared to have a
I take it
conversation
the
about it.
delinquent tax penalty is one that can go in a lot of different directions.
That could.
Because that's a larger percentage than it has been
We
in the
changed it
past?
last year and it's
Okay.
Sailed through.
Yeah,
Okay.
but
But you
Okay.
never know.
And there's always a lot of questions about roads,
Yeah.
Mhm.
so that's you guys, right? You two are gonna do it? Okay.
yeah. Well, remind me, do we do that in the context of the budget or do we do that as a separate?
No, in the context of the budget, but
That,
many of the men in the audience want to weigh in on how you're doing the roads. It happens every year.
We'll be ready.
Make sure you know the details on all the equipment.
Yeah, even with that, I don't remember too many equipment-related questions in the last 2 years.
I took it easy on this last year.
But largely involves, I think, funds for materials or time. But
Where's
I
the
think one of
light?
the things that we've got going for us this year is, I think this is the first year that we're going into it with a fully staffed
Road crew?
road crew.
Okay, good.
Basically, having Kari as the administrator just means it's so well-run,
Yeah.
nobody has anything to complain
Right.
about.
And Jeff Dean will do the library. That's another.
I know, lucky Jeff.
Well, I mean, I'm pretty comfortable with this. Unfortunately, I'm gonna be missing the next meeting, right? That's the 10th, so
That's when Gus will
I'll
be there.
likely be traveling, and that's the conversation with Gus. I think it'd be helpful, the best we can, to compile that list of frequently asked questions, but other than that, I'm feeling
Yep.
pretty comfortable
Okay.
with this.
Are you going to be zooming in at the next meeting?
I'll try. This is one of the events that I attended last year that it was very difficult for me to like peel myself away, because it goes like, it's like this all day, all week thing. And so it's hard for me to like peel myself away for a couple of hours and then re-engage. So I'll have to kind of feel it out. I'll do the best I can, but it's gonna be tough. I'll just have to make a contingency plan for my absence, I think. It would, at a minimum, it would be helpful if, I guess if Jamie is able to just kind of lead the meeting
Yeah.
and keep me out of having to drive too much of the conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the next item on the getting ready for town meeting was the anticipated questions. So I haven't put a ton of work into this, but we've got time. But basically, I took last year's document and sort of updated it where appropriate. So really, I think the best thing we could do tonight is start generating any additional questions. If anything comes to mind, then we can spend the next month coming up with answers for these things.
I'm wondering if related to the budget, we've had some earlier dialogue that the bonds have, or just like the servicing of debt in general,
Yeah.
has added a certain amount to the general expense and funds, and I wonder if there's just like an aggregate
A little more detail.
total that we could
Debt
have,
service.
so that we could answer questions about debt service and what percentage of, I guess, the budget that represents.
Sure.
At a minimum, I think it's an opportunity to inform folks that when we make these decisions, they
So
have
there is a
costs.
section, page 4 at the bottom,
Yeah.
capital spending. Are we carrying too much debt? I haven't answered that.
I know, I noticed that was a question without an answer.
Come up with something. Do we have a
Yeah.
capital plan? And why are we paying for Woodbury or East Montpelier's fire department?
And those are all good questions, and I guess, do we have somewhere in here, why are we recommending the fund for the garage, the reserve fund, thank you.
Why are we recommending a reserve fund? Just, okay, yeah.
I mean, as,
We'll add it for
like,
sure.
it's like, this is how we're doing future planning, this is a better way to do it, this is so we don't end up, needing to take out loans for things.
Right, and maybe in general, because I feel like between this year and last year, we have been adding
We've
quite
added
a
a
few
number.
reserve funds.
Right.
Yep,
So
okay.
maybe more
So the topic of
information
reserve
about
funds
Why do we have
and,
so many reserves?
yeah, and
Yeah.
why, what's good about them?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a little,
While we're on the subject of reserve funds, I guess maybe touch on this a little bit more when we get into the truck purchase, but I guess unplanned income or revenues. We don't really have a reserve fund for like general road. I'm thinking about county road repaving.
Getting bad.
And so we're, I think, rightly contemplating a reserve fund for, a building, and we've got capital expenses that are largely equipment and that sort of thing. But, we don't have any earmarked funds for like major infrastructure projects like the repaving of county, and while we may be able to get a mile of the county paving covered under a grant, that doesn't cover the other 2 miles of it, and we need to have funds set aside for that, or make a decision to bond for it. I can't remember. I think maybe East Montpelier bonded to do theirs. Is that how they did it? I can't.
I honestly don't remember. I looked at this one at the time. I'm sure that they got grant money. I don't know how far it went.
Right.
Right, we've historically done ours like in 3 1-mile sections, haven't we?
Because you get 1 mile of grant,
Right.
grant monies, which
Yeah,
pays, I
it's
think,
been a-
for 80% or something like that.
Right, but it's been a minute, because even the newest section is,
Well,
Showing
to your
somewhere.
point, Jordan, I've been thinking about it too. That is a gap in our capital plan right now. Because we really should, besides equipment and buildings, we should have road infrastructure in there as well. And so that would be the next level. Whether we fund it, however we fund it, whether it's bond, grant, reserve fund, all of the above, we should have a plan for how it fits in. And we don't. No,
Yeah.
no,
That's the
And it's
recommendation.
too late to add one now, but I
yeah, to
think,
this year's.
to this year's.
What is the ideal time frame for repaving County Road?
Well, I don't have that, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have that number specifically, but you know, in this 26 budget, we made, there was a decision at the recommendation of the road crew to stop crack sealing because it at this point is just, you know, good money after bad maybe, or beyond, but then that also precipitates the kind of rapid decline.
Yeah, okay.
And so I'm just assuming that at this point we're in on the cusp of a rapid decline. It's already not in great shape, and so I would say within a couple of years, at a maximum, we're going to be facing having a.
We should be looking at a plan to
Yeah.
get at least part of it done in 27.
Yeah.
And you're saying the state would only pay about 1/3 of the entire project?
They will provide a grant for up to 1 mile at a time.
1 mile at a
And they will
time.
pay for, I think 80%, maybe it's 2/3 of that mile.
I guess my concern is that what I would say is probably the worst mile is I don't know, probably the southernmost one.
That's the oldest.
Which is like the oldest. So my concern would be like the section that would need it the most would be somewhere in the middle, and that we would at the very least need to add like a mile before or a mile after, whichever segment gets done, or at least we should be prepared to entertain that.
We need to analyze it. It might be cost effective to get all
Just
three
go
done
for
at the same
it.
time.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I wish East Montpelier needed to do theirs and we could team up
Right.
and,
Right.
you know, share the overhead.
Just ballpark, what does it cost to do a mile of road?
I couldn't.
I don't know whether you're talking $1 million
I heard
or.
the number one time. It was very large.
I did too, and I forgot it.
I don't remember.
You
Okay.
just threw up and ran out of the room and completely blocked it out.
Yeah, part of why.
Tegan's got her hand up.
Tegan's raising her hand.
Oh, I just wanted to make sure we were thinking slightly larger than County Road. The paved part of Marshfield is getting pretty terrible also. It's not even a mile, but it should also be factored into what we're budgeting for. I think Lightning Ridge is still fine, but if we're thinking about the paved sections of road, that's a factor too.
Yeah, absolutely.
It'd be good to look at, you know, a 10-year history or something. I don't know if that
No.
exists anywhere, just
Oh, I'm sure.
of what section has been done when, sort of what frequency cycles we've been on in the past.
Well, maybe we make that as an activity for after town meeting
Well, I think it's a good question to
to
be
have
able to
prepared.
anticipate.
In the context of what other large expenses do we foresee on the immediate horizon, which may require bonding, I guess that one is the one that is most front and center to me. Everything else I would hope would be covered in part by other reserve funds, capital funds. Okay. Town, well, we still have a little bit of time before we get into the town plan. Was Jared planning on attending by chance?
Yeah, well, but he said 7, so.
Yeah, I was just curious.
You want to cover something else? Are we all set with the town meeting?
We did the truck purchase, I guess.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe we'd do the truck purchase.
Okay.
Is everybody else comfortable with that?
So I've shared a bit with about the CV. That's been sort of the number one complaint that I've fielded from our crew, I would say. You've heard some of it, right?
Oh, yes.
It's currently in the shop. It's got a exhaust system issue that they haven't been able to repair. John said that they are going to try one more thing. They're ordering some other part, and there's no guarantee it'll work. So anyway, we're at the point. I said, "Well, go find out what's out there. See what we can. We at least need to know what it would cost." So they came back right in the middle of last week with what we think is a solid option, which is a Ford 600. Would come with a plow, a stainless steel insert, and a spreader, hydraulic spreader for sand or salt. It's from Newport Hayes Ford, 118,765. And as luck would turn out, we're gonna have approximately 122,000 left in the equipment reserve fund after we pay for the mower, which you've already authorized. So this would basically drain that. So hold that thought for a second. One of the things that, Toby and I spent some time on today was what's the situation with our FEMA reimbursements? And, we've known that this was the case for a while, and we haven't really quantified it, but the FEMA reimbursements are covering not just out-of-pocket costs for things that we weren't planning on, like maybe contractor expense, but also reimbursing our road cruise time and the use of our equipment. And those two things were budgeted, and we appropriated tax money and other funds to cover those costs. So essentially, we're expecting $176,000 between the two events, the 2 years of flooding, that will be unbudgeted revenue. So that's, we knew that it was a large number, but today for the first time we actually got specific about it. So that's going to be really helpful. Some of that we've already brought in. I'll talk a little bit more about FEMA reimbursements later, but we're still waiting on more of it. And so, what would we do with that money? 167,000. That's just sort of, I think one of the things that you could think about doing is using it to, fund highway equipment. I would probably do that. I would probably make that recommendation for at least part of the money anyway, even if we weren't contemplating this new purchase. The other things I want to share, hopefully everybody saw my email earlier today, but it's got a solid warranty. Shared with you some of the detail about the comparables, where the other one other bid we got and the other places that the crew went when they were shopping, and then how the truck is used. I think this is important because currently with the International Down, the CD International Down, we're sending a 10-wheel truck across town just to salt County Road. And we're also, because those trucks aren't four-wheel drive, they're chained in most cases. So they're running up and down Route 14 and along County Road, and that just, beats up the road, beats up the chains. The chains are expensive. So something needs to happen, and I don't think anybody has a lot of confidence in the CDs. So whether it happens now or happens at some point in the future,
It needs to happen.
it needs to happen, yeah.
Did you look at trade-in value of that?
Well, the thing is that the CD's not worth anything in its current state. It's not running. So we need to get it repaired. We have looked into that in the past, apparently, and dealers have not wanted to touch it. They don't see any value in it. Theoretically, if we can get it running, it's worth something, but we'll just have to sell it on our own. But I wouldn't count on much there.
Are we in a position where we have to pay for some of the troubleshooting and repair for the CV? I mean, you mentioned that they're going to be trying another exhaust fix. Are we going to be on the hook for this while it's going through the repair process? And we're on the hook to basically get it running again, and then we're just going to have to
that's,
sell it for-
I think we've got about 1,000 into this repair job so far, and that's not including the work that they're going to do. So,
So at a minimum, we're gonna have to sell it for whatever we put the repairs into.
that would at least be that would be the goal. Well, I mean, the goal is to sell it for as much as we think we can possibly get. But yeah, I mean, we've all had that ancient Subaru, right? Where it's like, I put more money into this, what do I do?
Yeah.
It's a terrible position to be in.
And this new one is more or less available
It's available now.
now.
Yeah, in fact,
Like
if we
for
don't take it
pickup,
right now, it'll
somebody
be gone
else
this
will,
week, I
yeah.
think.
Yeah.
That's the way it's been represented.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are there any, do we have any option to pay for it, like finance a portion of it? Or does that mess with our current budget allocations? So like currently we don't have payments for servicing the financing of this in our budget.
We don't.
So
We don't, so.
it seems like we may not have a choice other than to pay for it out of capital because we wouldn't, because even if we decide to do a meaty down payment.
Yeah, that's part of the reason I didn't bring
Yeah.
a financing option to you. I mean, there really wasn't time to develop that.
Right.
That doesn't say it's not possible. We could plan to finance a portion of it, and that could be paid for out of the reserve fund, in the future, or we could just have an unbudgeted expense. I don't know what the ethics of that, knowing that we, just adopted a budget, a warning.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem right. Although you could reasonably say we're gonna pay for it out of the reserve fund and assume that even with the interest payment, we're gonna have that in the reserve fund. That seems likely to me. But I don't see the advantage of that.
Right.
No.
And the FEMA money is pretty sure bet.
Yeah, well, just jumping ahead, I was gonna, in my treasurer report, gonna share with you that I just signed a report for the next 140,000 in reimbursement, which is a nice big number.
Yeah, that's great.
That's bringing the 2023, I think 3 or 4 largest projects to the 90% federal level. And then just before I left, I got a report in my email for the remaining projects, bringing them to the 90%. So there's another 40,000 that we should have within 2 weeks. So I'm feeling pretty confident about our FEMA reimbursements.
Right, I definitely feel a lot more comfortable draining the highway equipment reserve fund down to nothing for this. If we're sort of join it with a commitment that we're gonna refill it
Yeah.
in that.
I'm feeling fairly confident that we're almost back to the fund balance that we had prior to the flood,
Okay.
the 23 flood. I mean, you've seen my reports about
Yeah.
cash in the bank, and
Yeah,
I think we won't have quite $1 million in cash. I suppose it depends on how much the reimbursement we do get before the end of the year, but I'm thinking we're pretty getting there,
Yeah.
with more on the way.
Well, does anybody have any strong feelings about either postponing or potentially not purchasing this vehicle, or are we feeling like we're prepared to maybe make a decision to purchase it out of the reserve funds? Does that kind of ask for kind of like a straw poll here on?
Would you like a motion?
Are there any strong objections? I just wanted to provide anybody with the opportunity to kind of levy any other concerns. But if there aren't any, and somebody would like to put out a motion, then I would entertain that.
What do you need in the motion?
Oh, that's a good question. We have a quote for the 118,000 and change.
765.
What's that?
765.
118,765.
Okay.
So the motion needs to be to take that money out of the reserve fund and use it to buy the truck.
Yep.
Is that
The
118
fancy new truck.
The fancy new Ford truck. Ford 1600 or Ford 600.
Ford 600.
The 118,765 that's the final number, or do we
Yeah.
need to do a not to exceed?
Yep. That's a final number.
That's a final number. Okay, so I guess I would entertain a motion authorizing the purchase of a Ford 600 as equipped in the quote that was posted to the shared drive for a total of $118,765. Anybody want to offer that motion?
I figured you'd want to do that,
I'll
Bill.
move it.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, there we have it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Deliver the good news.
Thanks for finding that.
Take all the credit.
Oh, no. John will be happy.
I'll be very happy.
Good. I mean, I think anything that decreases the 10-wheeler usage on already
Yeah.
depreciated roads.
Yeah.
How soon will we take
That's
delivery of
good.
that? Any ideas?
This week,
Really? Oh, good.
Did we ever consult with East Montpelier on whether or not they'd be willing to do county road for salting, just like as like an
I
interim?
don't know what happened with that. I didn't follow up. Sorry.
Right, that's all right. I was just, when you mentioned that we were driving all the way over to do that portion just for the salting, even if it weren't for the plowing.
Yeah, that
I
would
guess,
make
I don't
sense.
know, at this point, maybe it's a moot point, but.
You know, along those lines, I didn't get to ask this earlier, when we were talking about constable, weren't we also going to look into sharing a constable?
With other towns?
Yeah, and in particular, there's somebody over in Worcester we were interested in looking into.
I had a very informal conversation with an official in Worcester that thought that would maybe be problematic, but in general, the sharing of resources was maybe worth a conversation more frequently, just to make sure that we weren't missing any opportunities to do that. I think maybe what I'll do is follow up with the town attorney to get some final input on, you know, what our outside liabilities are for having an unfilled position, you know, how to go about either removing it or leaving it or sharing, and just make sure that we're tying any loose ends up on that. And then if they say, you know, if it's going to be too much of an uphill battle in the short term, trying to eliminate the position, and that there's some liability, then I think we should pretty actively pursue whether or not we should consider, you know, sharing one. All right. Well, thanks for the shuffle to do the truck purchase. I think that ends that one. So we're going to backtrack to the town plan. Oh man, never mind. I won't say it. Not going to say it. Welcome, Jared.
Hello.
How are you?
Just drove from Burlington, so I'm fine.
Well, thanks for driving all the way from Burlington.
It's all right.
For the record, Jared doesn't live in Burlington. He was just visiting. He,
Good to know.
No, I was just there this afternoon.
there's been some kind of independent conversation and I think some feedback provided to the Planning Commission over the last week on the draft town plan that was submitted through the portal. I think maybe before we get into that, I'm curious to hear how the meeting went on Monday. You guys had a meeting last Monday, right? And that
Last
was
Tuesday.
last Tuesday. And that was the Planning Commission's discussion of the
What the
kind of final draft is, yeah.
Correct.
And kind of a re-review of the timeline ahead.
Correct. Actually, and so the only thing we don't have finalized is, I mean, it's technically finalized, natural resources, because we're just using the current one, was energy. And we thought we had a good plan for energy. Gary Root talked to some people, CVRPC, some other places, and then the data that we got was just, we did not like it at all. And so we were going to try to move forward and take it. And then, I mean, it said like one house has biomass heating. Like my house has biomass.
This
You know what I
data
mean?
was from where?
CVRPC.
Oh,
And like, it doesn't even list the school as having biomass. We've got, you know, a multi-ton, massive silo. And so, and that wasn't the only thing, that's just my big, so the data isn't as clean as we want it to be. So we finalized everything but those two. And that's what you have, is what has been finalized there. But what I did find out was that because of the route we are going, we do not need to submit to CVRPC within any time frame. We can get it to them for comment whenever we want. I originally had that we needed to have it by Saturday to them. That was the date that it was. When I talked to CVRPC this week, they said, no, you're going through a local approval. You don't have to do that. If you want comments from us and stuff, we're just gonna need as much time as we can. But we don't actually, there's no like statutory, they need to get it, etc.
Don't you run the danger that they might say, yeah, but you missed this and it has to be in it, and then you've
No,
got...
apparently that doesn't, like, it can be approved locally just in general. Like, we don't even actually need their approval. It's just then if it's not correct, you do run that risk.
And if we
But-
don't have their approval, then we're not eligible for certain money, is that right?
Not fully, no.
Huh.
It's just that if the plan then isn't written right in a place, we could then not be eligible for something. But not just blanket, well, you didn't get it approved by us, you're not eligible.
I see.
But it could be that, oh, well, you needed to have this part in land use and you didn't, and so that makes you ineligible. But not just simply because we didn't go through them. Now, we're going to go through them. They also know the predicament we're in. And they're willing to kind of just say, this is what you need to do.
No, what I'm concerned about is if they say, oh, well, wait a minute, there's this major thing that you need to fix, then we have to go back and start the hearings all over again.
Technically, but that's what we have to do anyway. That's exactly what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Is once this plan is approved, we're immediately starting again. To basically now rewrite that. Because we've got to get those zoning regulations back in place.
Yes.
And so what we've done is we've tried to go through the CVRPC checklist as much as possible to make sure everything is there. We know we can't be at 100%. You know what I mean? Like we're not going to, this is why people pay $10,000 to have somebody do this for them, right? But I don't think the biggest thing we need is the regulations back in play. Once a town plan is approved, it makes us eligible again. All of the steps to get through possible grants and stuff, as long as that takes, we'll probably then have gone through the CVRPC, anything fixed, and a new plan in place anyway. At least that's the goal. But I've now talked to CVRPC couple times a week, and they seem to be like, no, just do what you're doing. They don't seem real concerned with what we're doing, which makes me feel much better. When they're like, no, you can just do this. Okay. So, and I've just kept them aware of everything that we're doing so that they know exactly what's going on, and this is the path that they told us to take. So that's what we're doing.
One more question along those lines. There are certain things that are in state statute that have to be in the plan.
Correct.
And I was looking at that and I noticed one that I don't think you do have in the plan.
Right.
If that's not in the plan, it's still valid even though the
Correct.
state statute says it has to be in the plan?
Correct. Because we are locally approving it. Again, what it'll be is you have an approved plan, but if it doesn't have X and that has to do with energy, then that may make you ineligible for a grant related to that. But it doesn't invalidate your plan.
Okay, well, one of the
Plan
things
is-
I've noticed that you are supposed to have in the plan, which I just learned by reading the statute the other day, is you have to have read all the adjacent town plans and you have to make a statement saying that we're in conformance with it. That seems to me cuts across everything.
Right. Well, there is an introductory part to it that isn't in, which would include that.
Okay.
Yeah. That's just not part of what we gave you, because it's not completely, we still have energy left to figure out.
So I'm going to take the opportunity to provide some broad feedback that
Yes.
I kind of collated, and then make a bit of a proposal. And maybe that'll save us from getting into the weeds here a little too much. But frankly, it's a little bit of a relief to hear that we're not under a more constricted time frame
Yes.
to have the CVRPC review the plan, because I was really kind of struggling with how that aligns with what we were given to review and provide feedback on. So, I guess getting to that point, it from my perspective and from what I've kind of gathered, with what we were asked to give feedback on was pretty rough. I mean, it was pretty clear to me that that members of the Planning Commission have worked diligently on their individual sections, but that there was a slight lack in cohesion, I think, from like one segment to the next in both style and formatting and everything like that. And so I was feeling pretty squeamish, even knowing that we were going to be going through another more refined process later in the year, like putting something like that forward without a kind of a minimum level of refinement. And so there's some lingering concerns about length and redundancy, and some redundancy in quoting of zoning regulations, which we already have a resource for zoning regulations. It's the zoning regulations. So not having to regurgitate too much of that information. Direct people, yes, but like not weight it down. I mean, it is a heady document, and I think if we don't take this opportunity to right-size the town plan so that we can go through this process in a manageable way without feeling like we're eating an elephant, I think that's a real missed opportunity. And so I was going to propose, and I'm really encouraged to hear that there's still a lot of work and refinement that's planned to go through, and we do obviously have some time for the Planning Commission to work through that and have their hearings and informative meetings and then approvals and adoptions. Would, from your perspective, the Planning Commission be willing to, it sounds like you guys have a master editor assigned to it. Could we, for the sake of efficiency, plug a select board member into that to kind of collaborate? And that way, I think, we avoid a situation where any lingering concerns are being missed until the last minute, and we get, the process gets delayed, derailed, at the last minute, which I think everybody wants to avoid. So if that is something that the Planning Commission would be open to, I think that would offer a lot of efficiency from an editing and refinement standpoint, just to make sure, rather than trying to work on how we're going to collate all of this, feedback, and make sure that it's, getting to the Planning Commission in a timely manner. I think if we could plug somebody into that.
Oh yeah, I don't think I had any problem with that. The concern that I have is we've got to follow the timeline that we have now. And we only have one more meeting before in which we have to approve it. And that's to keep to that timeline that we have. The big refinement needs to come in this second round. Because if not, we're just gonna wait, we're gonna have to wait longer. And the zoning regulations will not be active even longer. And so that's why I'm completely, yes, somebody, it's Kathy Hensey, right, to somebody to connect with her, and sort of be like that plug-in person from Selectboard. I think that,
Yep.
but I think that's why we're doing what we're doing, which is collecting all the feedback that's what we're gonna do at the public meeting too. We're just gonna collect everything we can, let everyone know what the process is, and then say, yeah, we know what is being approved isn't perfect, but because we're doing it as a locally approved plan, it then becomes active. Zoning regulations can be voted on and put back in active, and then we immediately start that process. We can, once we're done with it, in this first round even, which is March 6th, after that, we can immediately start the refinement process, right? We can we're already planning on with the Conservation Commission to get started on that process, right? So once March 6th happens, we move into that. You as Select Board move it along, right, in the approval process. But once we've done it and we've approved, it's kind of out of our hands and it comes to you.
Yeah, so I guess I understand that, and I definitely appreciate and accept let's not try to make huge structural changes. That's not really what I'm implying. I'm just
Right.
I want to try to get ahead of knowing that the Planning Commission only has 2 more meetings before it's moved over to the Select Board. I'm concerned about the outside chance that if expectations aren't met even from the public, and by the time we have our hearings, if there's call for more revisions, we're going to get log jammed, and so I think it would be helpful, I think, just to have the Select Board liaison working with Kathy. I think just to make sure that that the Select Board's going to be able to be confident in having those hearings and feel like we're ahead of we're ahead of any kind of modifications or.
I guess what I would suggest is though that's going to be our our collective job to make sure that everyone knows in the public that that's what it is.
Yeah.
That there can't be a log jam. I mean, at some point we have to decide: do we want the perfect town plan as long as it takes, or do the zoning regulations need to be put in place? And so we are just going to have to head that off to communicate that as much as possible to the public, that this is the working plan and here's what it is we're doing with it, right? And to fight, not fight the log jam, but just understand that it's all going to come in and we're going to collect that, and then we're going to immediately start a process to improve it. But we're tight to get this now done by April 28th. We're still 3 months, right, away from that.
Yeah.
And I fear waiting anymore. And not waiting anymore, but putting anything else in there that can push that out is just going to keep those zoning regulations farther up.
So
That's just my concern.
So Jared, I just want to get clear on what you're contemplating. I have the timeline in front of me.
Correct.
I get that this is what
Right.
you're still wanting to follow. So between now and February 10th, so is it the case that the Planning Commission considers this text final? You've got,
Yes and no, because we consider it final, but it hasn't been approved by us yet.
you finalized the text.
We've said, here's our document to finalize, but we haven't voted on it.
So I guess my question is, what level of changes do you anticipate making before the Planning Commission has hearings and approves the town
Right.
plan?
Well, definitely energy, because that needs a lot
So
of
you're
work.
gonna rewrite energy before it's approved on March 6th?
That would be the
Okay.
goal.
Okay.
Energy has to be rewritten.
Right.
Because it is the one that is the most recently updated in statute
Yeah.
that needs the most. So the one we have is a one that CVRPC gave us that said, use this as a model. It was really just the data in it that we.
Okay, okay. So there will be changes between today and March 6th.
Correct.
And the portal, the stuff that you're collecting through the portal,
Correct.
is your goal to incorporate all that or consider
depends.
all that?
It depends
It
on how
depends.
much there is.
Okay, so some of it you may hold until after the select board approval.
Right, if there was something like Ann was talking about, that is like, it says in statute it needs to be in there, that's what we'll put in there. If it's something where we're sort of like, could we say this way, or could this thing here be a little better connected to this thing here, that might be something, I mean, it takes a while
Yeah.
for us to get these things in there, like,
Right.
and the way the rules work, you guys know this too, when that energy thing happened, there was an email sent and people started, and we had to stop ourselves because we can't have a conversation about it. Right? Like, we can't talk about it, we can't have a meeting without warrant. And so that's kind of holds us back too, is then we have to make sure that we have a meeting that's warned properly to do that. And so, yeah, if it is substantial enough that it needs to be put in now, we will put it in. But if it's sort of, could we do this a little different, or maybe we should say it like this, okay, well, that would be something that we probably take up in this next round.
If I could just chime in, I think that, going through the document, there are all kinds of changes. I'm sure that your portal is full of
Yes.
small, medium, and large suggestions.
It is.
And I trust that you're gonna deal with the sort of the top priority, smaller stuff, like the editorial grammar, and if there are any factual errors, like what you
Correct.
described with the energy data.
Right.
To me, if there's any way, the next level of sort of lowest hanging fruit would be places where there's a lot of redundancy with other chapters. And that's where, like, I think it could be cut down by many pages, I think. If someone went through with sort of a big picture and said, well, I see this in this chapter, and I see it in this chapter, and maybe in a third chapter, and just spent some time, I feel like you'll get a better result in the hearings and the public part of process number one.
Right.
People don't have such a daunting plan, to wade through.
We have said that all along, and the problem is that when you start to get to the statutory things, there's places where the redundancy exists. It says it needs to be in this, and in this, and in this. And we can't, we talked about it, but we can't just simply say, see page, which would make sense, right? But we can't. It's got, a lot of this stuff has to be spelled out. Some of this is just the process of what a town plan is, which, if somebody knows a state representative, like, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, some of it is just, it is a daunting and I don't think you find anyone that disagrees with that.
Yeah.
But finding all of that and finding the proper way to do it is not easy. It is long. We've probably taken 30 pages out. Right? And the other part, to somewhat to what you were getting to, Jordan, most of this had been written with the new regulations. And then once we found out in December all of this, we've just basically made a new copy, kept it, and then went back and taken any of that out. Because it actually doesn't line up. So like, we can't pass a town plan that says it's aligned with these regulations, which technically aren't in place. So we had to, so a lot of the paring down came from us undoing our own work and going backward. Now, we're gonna look really smart, because there's places where we're saying the zoning regulations should say this. And then they will. But that has been difficult too, is kind of backing up our own work, right? So we do have two there's a whole other one that exists to align with what will be the now new zoning regulations. I think that the one that sticks out to me is Shroud. Was that a change?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had to go in and take out any reference to that. because technically it doesn't exist yet. So we had to go, or not exist, but those changes happened, so we had to go in and do that too. And so none of us would disagree. Yes, there is redundancy. I actually think probably half of it is redundant. I would say that personally, I think it's probably twice as long as it needs to be. But when you start going through their checklist, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this, it's a lot. And we haven't even added the new natural resources back, which is longer. It'll add that 30 pages back. But that's being worked on separately, sort of like Jordan, like the process you were talking. We have someone from Conservation Commission and someone from Planning that works on it. And then brings that stuff back to us. And so to your point, Jordan, that process does work, right? Having just sort of like a liaison, that actually does work really well. And so we would definitely welcome that. There is formatting, I agree on that. We tried to get OneDrive and all of that, and it did not work for us to begin with. We eventually got it all to work. That took a while too. So, but long story short, yes, we can definitely take someone from Selectboard and Kathy and work on that. And yes, we can go through and we can prioritize all the comments that come in and kind of go, statutory, have to make a change. Really big, let's really consider this. Important, but we can do this later, right? Like we can go through and prioritize that. That is something that we can really do.
Okay. Well,
I would
Thank you.
volunteer to work with Kathy if
Okay.
you would. I would.
yeah, I mean, and
I've done
Anne has
this
a ton of
I've done this
experience,
before,
but, yeah.
so I can perhaps.
I can
Plus,
connect
I have more of the higher aerial view, not having been
Well-
involved in the details. So.
Right, which sometimes, I'm gonna be honest, that does get us.
Yeah.
We get bogged down in
Of
it.
course you do. Of course you do.
And
Yeah.
we have to stop it. We have to stop. No. You know, we get so concerned with, and rightfully so, of the statutory parts of it.
Yeah.
What has to be like, we get bogged down in that. Not that that's bad, but we do. And just getting someone to see it another way is probably a good idea.
When is your next meeting, Jared?
Our next meeting would not be tomorrow, next week.
Next
Tuesday.
week, Tuesday. Okay. Not tomorrow, so that's
Yeah.
February 11.
10.
10. Right?
Oh, it is
That's
the
a Monday.
11th.
I
Yeah,
thought.
It is the
it's the
11th.
11th.
It
Tuesday's the
says
11th.
10th on the calendar, on the schedule, but it means the 11th.
Yeah, because that's just when we have to.
Oh, a warning
The
for
warning
public
has to
hearing
be
on the
15 days
11th. There it
before.
is.
Yeah.
Wait
so
a
that's
minute,
why
wait a
it's the
minute,
date.
wait a minute.
How can you?
Wait a minute.
Not our meeting.
The timeline that you gave us said 15 days notice.
That is of the approval meeting.
That's for the
This is
25th.
This is just a regular planning commission meeting next week.
Got it?
What you're seeing on there is the warning for the approval meeting.
Yeah.
So we have to do that 15 days out.
Okay, so you have until 15 days of February 25th
Correct,
to approve it.
correct.
Although it looks like you're having a hearing on the 25th. Wouldn't you wait till
It's a
approve it?
hearing. The approval is
The
on the
approval's March
6th.
6th, yeah, I see, okay. So you have until then to
Yes,
actually
correct.
pull it together, okay.
Correct, yeah, the 25th is the big public meeting, and then we would approve on the 6th. So we have between now and the 6th
yep, right.
to get those changes in.
The 6th, 2 days after town meeting.
Correct. Because it originally would have been town meeting, so we had
Yeah.
to move, thank you, Barbara.
Yeah,
We had to move things around
yeah.
to have that. So yes, so that's a good amount of time. I think what could really help and might be help with that prioritizing.
Sure.
Right? Taking a look at all the suggestions and
How
like
can I-
help with, I can give you access to see. And then we could go through and again, I think we should do like this has to happen. This we should seriously consider. This, yeah, we consider it, but it can be done
Okay, that'd be great.
in the
Also,
future.
I talked to Gary and he was
Great.
gonna send me the energy plan, but he didn't. So, if you have that, and is it possible to get a copy of the document you sent us that I can actually work on?
Oh, yeah.
Could
We can
you?
just give you access to do that.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yep, so I will work with you.
Wonderful.
Is everybody else on the select board comfortable
Oh, yes,
with that
sorry.
plan? I mean, I think, speaking with everybody, you know, kind of intermittently and independently, just to kind of get a feel for, you know, how everybody was not feeling about the town plan, you know, I'm confident enough in Ann's ability to kind of represent some of those 30,000 foot view pieces of feedback, and you know, I think we, being sensitive to the timeline, but also really wanting to make sure that we are getting ahead of any potential you know, resistance, essentially, and make sure that by the time we get to the 6th, we have a document that we're feeling, you know, comfortable accepting, you know, ourselves, but also, you know, that the public is going to feel comfortable with as a interim output.
And I think that's where the coordination between us
Yeah.
and just what the message is too,
Yep,
right? I think
definitely.
I think you're right. I don't think resistance is the word, but sort of like, whoa, this feels like it's moving quick, and you did. Well, I think it's that communicating why.
No, and
Right.
I don't think the messaging has been off on that. You know,
No.
everybody knows why we're getting in, you know, why we're going through this. You know, my concern, you know, quite frankly, it was just that, like, it was not refined. It was concerning to me to see,
Yes.
you know, typos and redundancies and all these things, and I was just like, whoa. What happens if we get some significant pushback on the level of refinement? You know, it's clearly a tremendous amount of work, and something that the Planning Commission has been working hard on to wrestle with. So I just want to make sure that we stay ahead of that.
I think that's right.
So thanks, Ann. Thanks, Jared. I mean, it's a lot. And we don't have to do anything with the zoning, right? Other than just put it on a parallel track, right? So
Right.
those are,
Right, just have a hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what we have,
Yeah.
and I will say it every day until this happens. We just have to make sure that once you get to the vote, you vote on the plan first, and then
and then the regulation.
whatever you do, yeah, like, make sure
Got it.
that is what we do. And the plan is voted on first, and then the regulation.
We can usually do things in order.
Yes. No, this threw us completely in a.
Mhm.
It has not been fun. I'll be
Yeah.
honest.
Well, we really,
But I think we can get there.
Mhm.
It's just trying to find that balance between expediency
Yeah,
and doing it right.
definitely.
And it's not an easy balance, but I think we can do it. It's just, you gotta figure it out.
all right, well,
Appreciate
please,
your perseverance.
yeah, and please convey our thanks to the planning commission.
Yeah.
It's been
Oh, they know
way,
it. They have worked, I mean, they've worked hard, and I don't think if you said that as a criticism in terms of refinement or something like that, not even as a criticism, right? But I think they would all go, yeah. I think they would go, yeah.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
and some of the
it's
other ones
not-
come out, they are done really, but I think everyone we've seen has at least had some input outside, meaning they've paid at some level of consulting, right? CVRPC help, and we didn't. I did just see one today, one of the planning commissioners emailed me. There is one, it's a grant that's open that we possibly, if we timed it right, like for the refinement for the second one, to maybe have some help,
Yeah.
right? To say, okay, here this, and if we could get it approved, you know what I mean? Like if we timed when to apply
Yeah,
for the grant, again, balancing, but maybe that's helpful so that we know for a fact that what we then put forward is exactly what we need it to be. But I haven't looked at that anymore, I just saw the email, so.
Let's connect about that.
Yeah, did you see that one?
I did, it didn't occur to me that you would want to pursue that again.
We could, I mean, again, time it balanced, but we could, if we could,
Let's discuss it.
yeah, we will. But thank you all.
Thank you.
Don't get us over the finish line, right?
Yeah, we'll get there. Or not, we'll just keep having really hard conversations.
That's all we will do.
But let's use that as the incentive, I think.
Yes.
Thanks, Jared, I
You're
appreciate
very
it.
welcome.
And please, as Christie has mentioned, pass along our gratitude to the planning
Oh, I will.
commission for their work on this. And we'll pivot to financial report.
Okay. All right, so we're
You gonna stick around for it? You wanna?
I'm just gonna sit for a second.
Breathe.
See, how it works in my house is once I'm out of the house,
I know, that's why I'm just gonna sit for a second.
I already have the hall pass, so just enjoy
Just
it.
hang out.
Yeah.
There's nowhere better to hang out than select board meeting.
Yeah. This is a safe.
We'll have a good time.
This is a safe place. Financial report. Yeah. Thanks,
So
Gary.
we're halfway through the fiscal year, and on the revenue side, we're doing very well. And that's not a problem there. No significant concerns in terms of expenditures on general government side. We talked about attorney fee and some of the expenses associated with this building, but they're, we've got plans for them, and not large numbers. We are on the highway department running high on materials in a number of areas. Gravel, chloride, sand, and salt are all on the high side. And so I spent some time talking with Toby and John about it, and it's typical to have a fair amount of variation. And we saw that when we looked at the 5-year summary, and the numbers tend to bounce around quite a bit when we're talking about materials. Some of that is this unbudgeted grant work, right? So we did a grant and aid, and which was pretty intensive on gravel, culverts, and erosion stone. And then the other grant that we had that wasn't budgeted was the Moscow Woods Bridge repair, which, not materials, but those were unbudgeted expenses, but they were also unbudgeted revenue reimbursements. So that certainly helped, so $87,000 between the two of those grants, so we'll help offset some of that. Vehicle maintenance is the only other category of expense. We're at 60% halfway through the year, so we're running high there. But otherwise, we're in good shape. So I just don't have a lot of experience, with managing this budget to say with confidence that, that we're going to come in under budget in all areas. I'm certainly not feeling that in terms of materials, but I'm not panicking either. I think this is, we can deal with this. We're in a good cash position overall. And I think, we'll just have to, we're going to manage the materials as best we can, make sure that we're not too high, and hopefully the overall budget will come in under what we budgeted.
Well, I believe we went a fair amount over budget on materials last year, and in the last couple of
We sure
budgets, we
did.
have incrementally increased the allocation for materials. So, I think we're as part of the way through a course correction on our materials allocation. I think if there's any good news, I think by this time last year, we had already had 2 or 3 mud seasons, so we're already,
I think we doubled our gravel budget last year.
Yeah.
So, you just can't plan. It wouldn't be responsible to plan for that, but
right.
so these things do happen. But anyway, questions?
No, I think it's encouraging to see that we're chipping our way back to, a pretty good cash situation relative to the last 2 years of
Oh, what a difference
of
between
expenses.
this time last year.
Yeah.
We were really, because we had not received any FEMA reimbursements until I think late February was the first one. So it was getting really tight.
Did we wind up borrowing?
We did, we borrowed $100,000
That's right.
from the bond bank at
That's right.
1.3%.
Yeah.
We've paid half of it back, and actually this
Right.
week, I will make the other ACH payment for the remaining portion, because it's due in February and it has to be paid by ACH. So that'll be on the warrant that you see next 2 weeks from now. And then we'll be done with that.
Nice.
It worked.
It worked.
Yeah.
It was just what we needed.
That's what it was for.
1%, that's great.
Good.
Looks good that it's there. We do.
Yeah, it is a real service.
Well, thanks, Craig. Does anybody else have any other questions about the financial report? I think pretty good news all around. We've already dealt with the truck, so I think we can roll into reports if
Okay.
everybody's comfortable with that. Do you want to go in order that's listed, or yeah? Well, let's just do that.
Thank you, Jared.
Thanks, Jared.
I don't think we have a report, unless Bill or Tegan, I don't think we have anything new. We haven't met since our last meeting, so no update there.
Very good. Well, I guess I'm up next with the potential land purchase proposal. So we just wanted to put this on there because I think the public has the right to know that we're still continuing to look into this, and I think maybe Kari and I were appointed liaisons on this particular thing, and I'd met with the Pelchucks to review sort of the ins and outs, both of the proposal and then what the town would be looking at. Some of those things are the same things that we covered in our executive session a couple of meetings ago. So those issues are still kind of the primary ones, but I wanted to have the opportunity to meet with the Pelchucks to kind of discuss, what their willingness is to help the town kind of work through those challenges. The primary ones being that the town has both advantages and disadvantages in entertaining a property purchase like this one that has an existing Act 250 permit on it. If it were any other parcel that didn't have an active permit, we would have certain advantages in being able to pursue a certain amount of activity within 10 acres without having to go through Act 250 permitting, but we'd likely still have to go through some stormwater permitting, depending on what our activities are on those 10 acres. Anyway, part of what we'd like to continue to explore is how we might be able to work with the Pelchucks to explore a I always forget it right before I'm about to say it. A jurisdictional opinion, basically, that would facilitate a slight modification to the existing Act 250 permit that would encompass all of the potential usage that we would want to potentially realize if we were to purchase the parcel, and then also. There's some outstanding questions about, what would happen if we, as a future owner, allowed the existing Act 250 permit to expire without renewal, and what would be our obligation for remedial action, which is pretty standard for any Act 250 permit of this type. Anyway, so we largely just want to try to hopefully afford us the time to kind of work through some of that. I've already had some initial conversations with A&R. They seem very happy to engage and realize that many municipalities are looking at these types of opportunities and the advantages that it would afford them. So, I think everybody right now is feeling pretty collaborative and cooperative, but we also want to respect the fact that the Pelchucks have a parcel that is marketable and not obstruct their their needs or desires to seek a buyer. So I've got some marching orders to follow up with some surveyors to just see what kind of costs there might be, whether or not we'd be able to share in pursuing any of those adjustments to the Act 250 permit with the pellet trucks. But those, we can get into the weeds if we'd like to, or we don't. But Rose, do you have anything that you would? Does that sound like a fair characterization of where we ended up?
Sure. I don't think I wrote it all.
No.
You did fine.
I was going to ask one more question. What was it going to be? Oh, so I don't know. I guess depending on where conversations go and how soon we can get different parties involved and kind of help with this continued exploration and like a scoping, let's just call it scoping. It would seem more appropriate that this might be moved to like a standalone agenda item at the very least for a future select board meeting, so that it's not just kind of like me reporting like from a very limited perspective. I guess I want to provide people with the or at least the public the opportunity to participate in some dialogue. Does that sound about right to everybody?
Actually, is this likely to come up at town meeting? Somebody might ask about it.
I think that that's a fair question for anybody to ask. I mean, I know that there's been folks in the community who are curious about it. You know, I've been trying to be respectful both to the town's position and the Pelchuk's position, and wanting to kind of work through this exploration. But by no means keep anybody out of the loop, specifically the public. So I'll certainly be in the position to speak to it, or you know where things stand. I think that would be great. I kind of wonder whether or not it'd be worth having on the agenda for one of the next two meetings, in the event we want to try to field any of that before town meeting, or see if it comes up at town meeting.
Or we're having a meeting at which we're going to present the agenda to everybody, right? Don't we do that? Or people can come in and ask questions. We could maybe talk about it a little bit then.
Yeah.
Pre-town meeting hearing.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for, thanks.
Yeah, that would probably be an appropriate one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe, you know, serve up the opportunity to have a broader conversation briefly at town meeting. Maybe that would be a question for Chuck as well, or not Chuck, Gus.
I'm adding it to our questions
Yeah.
document.
And Greg and Rose will be there too
I'll be typing.
Rose will be typing. I wonder how appropriate it would be for that to come up in discussion relative to the agenda of town meeting. How would that come up?
people can stand up and ask questions, and maybe nobody will.
Well,
But
it's in the town report, so
Right.
they can
Right.
ask questions about the town report.
Yeah.
That's fair. Okay. Yeah.
And they might have been expecting to see it in the budget,
Right.
on the warning itself.
Right. Okay. So we'll try to include it in an informational, as a part of the informational session that we'll be having, prior to, relative to the agenda.
Just be ready to
and
speak to it.
Be ready to speak to
Yeah.
it more broadly during town meeting. All right, great. Tegan or Barbara, any town clerk updates?
Barbara has been hard at work at the town report, working with our design person. So we're in the phase where we go back and forth with her. She sends a draft, we look it over, make any tweaks, send her any new stuff. So that's exciting that is shaping up. We'll start putting together the ballot and getting ready for town meeting, all the little bits and pieces that need to go together. The only other two exciting things that are going on. Donna Fitch is meeting with an archivist this week to look at the map and start to talk options. So I will let you know as soon as we have options with that. And the other thing is that we have the 3 new desktop workstations for the listers and Barbara and me, and I'm working with Michael Moreland to get those installed shortly, which is exciting for us. Maybe not glamorous, but I am looking forward to it. And Barbara, feel free to add whatever you want to add to this report.
So I actually have a quick question. So for the last several elections, when we had anybody running for an office on the Australian ballot, we had a meet the candidates document with your little bio that you wrote about yourself and your photo and so forth. So with this election, we only have 3 offices up on an Australian ballot, and only 2 of them have candidates running, and both candidates are running unopposed. So do you feel we need to do a meet the candidates since
Relative to the history of the candidates of already serving in some of those roles? Yeah.
Christie is basically going to win her seat. John McCullough's going to win his seat, and hopefully someone's going to win the open select board seat. So I'm feeling like we probably don't need to do a meet the candidates, but I'd like for Tegan and the board to give me what your thoughts on it.
I don't think it's particularly necessary.
A hard copy document that's posted around town, and it's in the voter information notebooks that have to be distributed around town by this Sunday is the deadline.
Okay. I mean, I am happy to send in a bio if you think people would demand, you know, a statement, a meet the candidate statement. It seems, I would not assume that, you know, no one would want to run against me ever. I don't know.
I think given that you just were elected a matter of months ago, and that John is a pretty well-known figure around here, it just doesn't seem like it's worth.
Yeah. No. That's fine.
I agree.
Okay, thank you. Tegan, are you good with that?
I'm good with that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. And thanks, Tegan, for the update. Kari?
Yeah, so I mentioned FEMA reimbursement, so that's great. Just wanted to update you if you saw that we received an application for tax exemption, complete tax exemption, state and local. And I just wanted to update you that the listers have a handle on that. They've got an analysis by our attorney. They're going to follow up with some questions of the applicant. And then it just becomes part of the valuation, the assessment process for the 2025 grand list.
And what is the timing on that?
So is it April that they're supposed to be done?
Okay.
I know they didn't really complete till June last year.
Okay.
And then there's an appeal process. And so if they're, if someone wants to appeal, they can sign up for a hearing. And if they're unhappy with the result of that, then they can.
And so the select board doesn't have a role in that?
It could ultimately be heard by the Board of Civil Authority.
Okay, an appeal. Only an appeal.
A grievance, yeah, a grievance.
A grievance.
Yeah, so that would be the very last step. No need to do anything right now. And, I just wanted to mention that I took the ethics training, the required ethics training. And just to remind you, we had a resident recommend a number of changes to the rules of procedure regarding ethics. So you might want to, if you have to take the training anyway, you might want to do it before March when you're going to be looking at the rules of procedure again.
I also took it pretty pain-free.
Yeah.
And it's stuff you should already know. We all should already know.
Quick refresher.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the requirements is that at a minimum, the chair of the select board needs to annually take a training to that extent, and then somebody, I think somebody in the town office as well. So I think we're well covered with Kari and Tegan. I still need to take it, but I would highly encourage everyone to try to get it done before town meeting so that we're well prepared to adopt our, or have a conversation about our rules and procedures and then adopt those after town meeting. Does that sound?
There's the ethics training and there's the open meeting law training. The open meeting law is the one where only a few folks have to take it, but I think the ethics is kind of an across the board thing. I've got a whole spreadsheet, so I think that's one everybody needs to knock out by September.
And does that also apply to the DRB?
I looked at the rules and regs and I sent it to a whole slew of folks, I think including the DRB. Yeah.
I think including the
DRB.
I think
yeah.
so.
Ooh, and are you've got a spreadsheet, Keegan, yeah, oh, of course you do, thank you.
Of course she does.
Of course you do, yeah, thank you very much. So please, yeah, try to find some time to take
It
that.
wasn't that long. It was an
40
hour,
minutes.
40
Yeah.
minutes, something like that.
Very good. Any other items, Kari?
Nope, that's it for me.
Wow. Oh,
I won't be here at the next meeting, and neither will you.
me. You're not going to Pennsylvania too, are you?
No, I'm going to Virginia.
Well, you're welcome. Oh, yeah, that's right. You guys have a much more fun trip than me.
Oh, wow, that's a cool place.
It's a great place. Well, thank you, everybody. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Whoa, look at that.